Most of us remember Batman Beyond as a sleek, neon-soaked sequel permission to stay in a world we weren't ready to leave. In 1999, it felt like the ultimate evolution. We had the high-tech suit, the industrial score, and a Gotham that traded shadows for cyberpunk reign. But if you look past the futuristic hardware, you'll realize that the show wasn't a victory lap. It was a reckoning. And it wasn't interested in preserving a legend. It was interested in a warning. It's a brutal interrogation of what happens to a man who outlives his mission and the crushing cost of being a hero who never learned how to stop. We're conditioned to see this as a passing of the torch, a clean transition between generations. But Batman Beyond is actually a tragedy about a man who stayed in the cave until it became a tomb. It didn't just give us a new hero, it showed us the ghosts of the old one. And the reason it's uncomfortable isn't nostalgia. It's recognition. Because the show isn't judging Bruce Wayne, it's asking whether his mistake is the only way the symbol ever actually worked. It forces us to confront a terrifying possibility, that the heroism we admired was actually a slow-motion self-destruction. At the time, that distinction was easy to miss. The show arrived wrapped in spectacle, a sleek future and a younger protagonist who could still take hits. For years, Batman Beyond was framed as a solution, a younger body, a better balance, a fix for Bruce Wayne's failure. But that reading is comforting and the show quietly undermines it. We wanted to believe Terry McGinnis was this corrected Batman, someone who could wear the mask without losing his soul. But this isn't just a story about a kid getting a suit. It's about the gravity of a legacy that eventually pulls every new life into its orbit. The lesson didn't land immediately because it wasn't meant to. As kids, we saw a gruff Bruce mentoring a rebellious new Batman. As adults, we see something far less comfortable. We see a man who survived the mission but lost himself in the process. The show wants us to think Bruce is a warning, but it's not done with him yet. It isn't just showing us that Bruce failed, it's making us watch the momentum of that failure as it begins to claim Terry too. This version of Bruce is physically diminished, but the deeper damage is internal. We see him in the pilot Rebirth, and the imagery is haunting. He is forced to use a gun, the very thing he spent his life fighting just to survive. It is the ultimate moment of compromise, the literal death of his moral code. He didn't step away from being Batman because he chose peace. He stepped away because his body failed him in the one moment where failure was not an option. And even then, he didn't truly let go. He kept the cave, the systems, the habits of control. What he didn't keep were relationships. The emptiness speaks for itself. Bruce lives alone, surrounded by relics, clinging to routines that no longer serve him. He lives in the museum of his own life, a curator of a mission that officially ended decades ago. Every suit and every glass case represents a person he pushed away or bond he allowed to break. His isolation isn't framed as noble sacrifice. It's framed as consequence. It is the natural result of a life that allowed no space for anything beyond the mask. Bruce didn't lose his friends because he became old. He lost them because he never learned how to release control. And the show never asks whether that control was wrong, only whether it was survivable. Whether it was Dick Grayson, Barbara Gordon, or Tim Drake, the mission always came first. And that mission eventually demanded they all leave or break. This wasn't accidental. The people making Batman Beyond, Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, and Alan Burnett, knew exactly what they were pushing against. They were reacting to the exhaustion of the superhero genre. By the late 90s, the invincible hero was wearing thin. They chose to inject uncomfortable reality into a Saturday morning lineup, trading the legend for the frailty of a man who can no longer reach his heart medication. They moved the authority of Batman from a rooftop to a computer chair, making him a voice in Terry's ear rather than a force of nature. This shift from spectacle to reality is why the lesson eventually stops being about characters and starts being about us. But this is where the story takes a risk we often misinterpret. We're conditioned to see Terry McGinnis as the fix, the protagonist who refuses to surrender his identity to the suit. But that framing might undersell the danger Terry is actually in. Terry is there to challenge Bruce, yes, of course, but their relationship is just a generational gap. It's a clash of philosophies. Bruce believes discipline and isolation are the only ways to endure. Terry believes that discipline without balance leads to collapse. But here's the terrifying question the show forces us to ask. If Batman isn't a total obsession, is he enough? Because if Bruce was right, even partially, then Terry's humanity isn't a solution. It's a liability. Throughout the series, we see Terry constantly failing the people he loves. He misses dates, he lies, and he disappears for days. Every time he tries to be a normal kid, the the mission pulls him back, creating a trail of broken promises. And the show keeps asking the same quiet question: how many times can he come back before something finally doesn't? By trying to keep his balance, is Terry failing to see Bruce sacrifice everything to protect? Bruce's isolation was a tragedy, but it was also a shield, make no mistake about it. It made him focused, lethal, and untouchable. Terry isn't proof that Bruce was wrong. He is a gamble that the city can survive without total obsession. By refusing to make that same trade, Terry is moving forward with an exposure Bruce never allowed. He is trying to be the symbol and the human being at the same time. The show doesn't tell us if Terry's balance is sustainable. It simply forces us to watch the cost of the gamble. Every time Terry barely makes it home, the neon fades and the reality of the trade-off sets in. As viewers, many of us grew up admiring Bruce's total commitment. But Batman Beyond invites us to reconsider that admiration and invites us to question whether endurance alone is a virtue, whether survival without connection is something to aspire to, whether refusing to let go is strength or just fear disguised as discipline. It asks us to look at the caves we build in our own lives, the missions or the identities we cling to so tightly they eventually push everyone else out. These are questions you absorb as a kid and revisit later. That's why Batman Beyond hits differently as an adult. What once felt like a cool future now feels like a mirror. The show isn't telling us what to think. It's showing us what happens when purpose becomes the only thing holding you together. It's about the danger of letting what you do completely erase who you are. This reflection becomes unavoidable in the way the story ultimately chooses restraint. It closes not with spectacle, but with understanding. The final chapters don't exist to surprise us. They exist to release us. They acknowledge what mattered, affirm the story, and then step away. This ending reframes the entire series as a meditation on closure. It tells us that attachment doesn't need to be infinite to be meaningful, and that letting go doesn't erase impact, it completes it. That choice is bold because it resists the modern franchise instinct. In a world of endless reboots, Batman Beyond argued for an end. It trusted us to understand that endings are acts of respect, that restraint is care, that completion is not failure. This is the final lesson. Letting go is not abandonment. It's recognition that identities must evolve, and that symbols always outlast the people who wear them. These are adult truths, because at some point, every mission becomes a mirror. The series was never teaching us how to keep going forward. It was teaching us how to stop with intention, how to honor what came before without being trapped by it. It forces us to look at our own caves, the habits and the identities we refuse to let die. It forces us to ask, which one are you? Are you the one who outlasts the fight but loses the world? Or are you brave enough to step into the light before the suit becomes the only thing keeping you upright? It taught Bruce, it taught Terry, and quietly, it's still trying to teach us.